Beautiful.
Okay, well, it's 12:05, and I think that let's see, we've got a good turnout here today, which is really great. And by way of introductions, my name's Andrea Zaki, and along with Eric Luden, we are the principals at Digital Silver Imaging. Eric is the founder, and I started in 2010 with Eric. And Eric is in our mothership location in Belmont,
The worldwide headquarters.
worldwide headquarters, and in the lab. And we are super happy to have our very first DSI print ambassador and a brand new, and this is huge, Nikon ambassador, Mike Mezeul, with us today. Mike has been a friend of ours for a long time, like a really long time, Mike, right?
Yeah, I think
Sure.
photo plus 2017,
Yeah.
18, something like
Yeah.
that. I've slept since then, but it's
Yeah.
Christy
So
Odom
Odom introduced
introduced us.
us.
Yeah, Christy Odom connected us. Another Nikon ambassador. Yeah, connected us.
Yeah.
Boy, yeah. I mean, it's been a long time since Photo Plus, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
really enjoy your work and enjoy our chats, and really excited about this new development for us
yeah.
working with you.
Yeah, right on. No, it's a pleasure, you guys.
Yeah. So what we're going to get started here, and I just cover a few of the ground rules for today's webinar, or guidelines. What we're going to do is, if you have any questions, we want to keep this kind of an open dialogue. You can post them one of two ways. Either in the Q&A, which I see there are already some questions in the Q&A, or you can post them in the chat if they kind of are immediate and relevant. I'm going to try to answer the questions in the chat as they come up. And the ones for the Q&A, we're going to save for the end of the webinar. So if you have any like big overarching questions for Mike, like, why is sushi his favorite food, save those for the Q&A. But if you have a question that's more relevant to what Mike is talking about, like what was the name of that paper again, or what is that camera system, or where is that website address, that URL, you can throw those in the chat. So I think at this point, let's turn it over. So take it away, Mike.
Right on. So thank you guys first off for having me along, and for everybody tuning in on their lunch breaks, depending I guess where you are. If you're already after lunch, thanks for hanging out. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just real quick here, and let's make sure this is good to go over here on my end. All right, so can you guys see my screen? Right on. Perfect. Okay, so one thing I've learned about using Keynote over the years for presentations is once I share my screen, I actually lose my mouse. So I can't see my mouse, or I really can't see the chat. So Andrea, if you want to help me, just any questions that come in, don't be afraid to interrupt, because I can't actually see the chat. So yeah, real quick, you guys, let's get going. So my name is Mike Mezeul II. I am a photographer out of Dallas, Texas. Kind of. I've had all my life in storage since pretty much April of last year. So I am what people have kind of dubbed me an extreme nature and landscape photographer, and we'll get into that in a minute here. But I'm also a DSI ambassador, which is awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me along for the ride here, and to get to work alongside some very talented printmakers, and also a Nikon ambassador, which just happened as of, I think, 2 weeks ago now. So yeah, I am basically, in a nutshell, a giant photographer nerd. I love everything about it. I love the shooting part. I love the post-processing part. I love the printing part. So today, I really wanted to take some time to explain my work to you guys, explain kind of my workflow in a way, and then talk about some of the things that I've learned over the years in my prints, and also from judging several print contests, some of the errors that I see with people who submit prints, and just kind of help give you guys a little bit of a foundation to build off of creatively, and also when it comes to your printing. So, like we talked about earlier, no pun intended, I'm an open mic. So if you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them during the session. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I'd rather you guys ask questions and we answer them here than, when we wrap up, you guys go, hey, I wish I would have asked that, and kind of have the regret of not asking. So a little bit about me first off. Where do we all start, right? We all got to start somewhere. So the image on the left there is yours truly at the age of 16 with my very, very fashionable bright street cone orange shorts, my lovely sandals, and that was indeed my car, also known as the reason that I never had a girlfriend in high school. So I was fascinated with the sky, with everything that went on above my head, from the stars to the moon to thunderstorms. But being from upstate New York originally, when I first moved down to Texas, it's funny, we go up to New York and everybody's like, oh, the thunderstorms are so bad. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. There's such a big difference in the storms that happen in New York versus Texas. And so I was absolutely fascinated and terrified at the same time of these storms. So instead of hiding from them, I tried to understand them. And that was kind of where my foundation for meteorology and atmospheric science was built off of. I was originally going to the University of Oklahoma to study atmospheric science. I actually built this vehicle because back then I didn't have any smartphones. I didn't have any sort of wireless internet to get the data I needed. So I actually had to manually find these storms using these instruments in my car. Well, right around that same time too, everybody loves this story except for two people in the world, and you're going to understand who those two people were in about 3 seconds here. My parents forgot my birthday, and so for my birthday, they came out at the end of the day when they realized, oh, it is my son's birthday. They came out with an old 1975 Yashica MG1 film camera, and my dad gave it to me and said, hey, this was mine through the Air Force. I never learned how to use it, so maybe you can learn how to use it. And from there, me being competitive, my father being competitive, I was like, all right, I'm going to learn how to use this camera. And I said, well, why don't I learn to photograph these storms that I'm chasing and watching? And that image on the right, I know what you guys are saying. Please keep all questions on how to purchase a print to hang over your bed of this image until the end of the presentation. I know it's fantastic, but this was my very first image that I ever took of a storm. I ever took of lightning. And I thought, okay, you just stand outside, you point the camera to the sky, and you press the shutter right when you see the lightning, and that's how you capture it. I didn't know anything about long exposures or tripod or anything like that. So that's why it's got this beautiful, almost like double exposure effect on the top part of the lightning. It's fantastic. But over the years, I've grown since then. I have spent every year for the past 23 years traversing Tornado Alley, photographing anywhere from the Texas-Mexico border all the way up to the North Dakota-Canadian border, out to the Colorado Rockies. And then I pretty much stop right when we start getting into like Arkansas, Missouri, in that area. So I chase anywhere between 12 to call it 17,000 miles every year, just documenting these storms. And to me, they are absolutely fascinating because I love landscapes. They're great, they're beautiful, but I know that Half Dome's always going to be there. I know that Skogafoss waterfall in Iceland's always going to be there. These storms, you're literally photographing something that fades and dissipates into thin air after just X amount of time. So you're seeing something that most people in this world will never get to see. And it is a way to share the beauty of these storms that are just, so momentary with the rest of the world. And each one's different. You never know what you're going to get. So over the years, I go out, so excited each spring to go out there and drive towards something that most people are running from and capture the beauty of these storms. Now, I don't want to say I got bored with storms, but about 2015, I started thinking, well, hey, storms are beautiful. What in the heck else is out there that shows the raw power of nature? What can show me just how beautiful this world is, but yet is almost kind of terrifying in a way, just like storms? And lo and behold, volcanoes, AKA another way to give my mother a heart attack. So this is these are the 5 volcanoes that I have spent a lot of time on since 2015, and that is the Fagradalsfjall volcano in Iceland, Mauna Loa, Kilauea, Fuego in Guatemala, and Pacaya as well in Guatemala. And for me, volcanoes are another way to, once again, just kind of capture the beauty of something that most people hide and run from. And 100%, they are to be respected. And I have done a lot of studying of volcanology as well. I've also gone out with a lot of mentors who have been photographing volcanoes since the 50s, the 60s, also members of USGS, also going out with the National Guard during, say, like the 2018 Leilani Estates eruption in Hawaii. So I'm not just running out to a volcano and taking pictures without any knowledge. I don't ever want to encourage anybody to do that. But volcanoes have become one of my favorite subject matters to photograph. Each one's different. They have very similar characteristics to, say, storms. Storms, they are moments in time, right? Then they just vanish into thin air. Volcanoes, they only erupt for a certain amount of time and then they stop erupting. They're also a way to kind of look at the way this world was built. You're getting to see the newest land on Earth form right in front of you. So that is another subject matter that I cover. And I wish I can go way into talking about volcanoes with you guys, but we don't have the time today. But that is another subject matter that I shoot.
Mike, quick question, Mike. I noticed that a lot of those volcanoes, they look like aerials. Do you do aerials? Mostly?
So they are partial. No, most are actually from the ground. So Fuego in the middle there, that is from on top of another, ironically, volcano right next to it called the Acatenango volcano. The top right one is the Pacaya volcano. That's from the ground level. Bottom right, that is Kilauea. That is an aerial. The lava river on the left is from Mauna Loa. That's an aerial. The reason that those two are aerials, I did document them from the ground, but Mauna Loa was at 11,000 feet. There was no way to really get up that high. And Kilauea on the right, that was Fissure number 8 during the 2018 Leilani Estates eruption. And I had to be escorted everywhere by the military. And the area to get that shot just wasn't safe. So there was no way I was going to be taken there. So I had to get that by air. And then on the left, that's Fagradalsfjall in Iceland. Did a ton of stuff on the ground. This is just one of my favorite shots, and that is from actually a drone. So which died right after this photo. So yeah. So it's a mix and match of aerials and static land-based shots.
Gotcha.
Cool. So speaking of landscapes, I still love them. I spent a lot of time teaching landscape photography workshops, which we'll get to in a second here. But I just love exploring the beauty of this world, right? Everywhere from shooting in Iceland with the Northern Lights to Antarctica and all the beautiful details and structures and colors of the icebergs there, to some of the most remote parts of the desert Southwest. And that bottom left shot there is from Patagonia. Top left was actually last week. I did a project where I was working on shooting some aerials over Monument Valley. And so landscapes to me, they are still 100% something I enjoy shooting. Now it's hard to say, do I enjoy shooting landscapes versus tornadoes and volcanoes? I will most likely always choose volcanoes and tornadoes. But landscapes are indeed absolutely beautiful and something I am very passionate about photographing. And with that being said, there are a lot of landscape photographers. And one thing I enjoy about going out and shooting landscapes is finding different angles, finding different conditions, and finding different ways to shoot scenes that are, in a way, kind of overshot, and trying to find a way to tell the story that most people would never think about telling the story of that landscape. Wildlife comes with landscapes, ironically. You see a lot of wildlife when you're out there shooting landscapes. And, up until about 5 years ago, I kind of just disregarded it. And I was like, oh, there's a bear. Cool. Take note, there's a bear over there. I didn't really think, hey, maybe let me photograph that bear. And the more I've gotten into the wildlife scene, the more I've fallen in love with it. So I just recently got back from spending some time documenting the humpback whales down in the area of Tonga. And that's that top left shot there. And not saying that my subject matter is changing, but I am going to start incorporating more wildlife into my work throughout the upcoming year. Especially, I want to get more into the ocean life to start getting into a little bit more conservation, to show, hey, there's a lot that is kind of out of sight, out of mind for us, especially in regards to how the climate's changing. And I want to, start photographing the beauty of the animals and telling their story and showing their homes, and also seeing if I can find stories that show how their homes are indeed changing and how their lives are changing. One of the things that was very, very interesting when I went to Antarctica is that I wish I'd thrown this photo in here actually now, but the Gen 2 penguins there, they are dealing with a huge issue of having a lot of their chicks not survive birth because the temperatures down in Antarctica have risen so much that there's a ton of meltwater. And that meltwater is actually coming down into the nest, and the young chicks, they don't have the down feathers to protect themselves from hypothermia. So they're dying when they get wet. So now the Gen 2s, which I find this absolutely incredible, the Gen 2s actually had to have like a meeting and say, hey guys, we need to do something about this. And they now build their nest out of rocks, and they build them elevated off the surface so that meltwater goes underneath and through the nest below where the chicks are. And that's allowing the chicks to grow in a way to where they can get their down feathers and then they can survive. So pretty amazing when you take a look at wildlife, what's going on, and just, the stories that they can tell. So when I shoot all that stuff, a lot of that stuff is kind of on my own time. It's a lot of different projects. I do different work for Nat Geo, for BBC, for Nikon. I do a ton of different work for different publications. But when I actually have some downtime, I'm also teaching workshops. So next week, I head out to the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone to teach up there, and then coming back down to Texas to teach for 4 weeks for the fall colors and the swamps. So workshops, this is not a sales pitch by any means, but if you are looking to grow your photography and really expand the way you shoot, or shoot in a new area that you're unfamiliar with, workshops are a fantastic way to do so. It's really cool to see the different participants that come along. They either want to grow in their work, they just want to have the friendship and the companionship while they're out there, or they want to be taken to a spot where they don't know how to get there, or they don't know where, or what to shoot there and how to shoot it. So it's really cool to have so many different participants come in with different goals, and I absolutely love them. We nerd out. Everybody comes in as strangers and we leave as one giant family. So if you're looking for workshops to join, whether you come along with me or come along with somebody else, the one big piece of advice I could give you guys is to do some research. Do some research on the company you're going with. Make sure they're permitted. Make sure that they actually have the right permits to operate in that national park, or in that BLM land, or on that Navajo land, because you have to have permits for everything. And one thing that we are seeing is more workshops that are doing things kind of under the radar. So make sure you go with somebody that's permitted. Make sure you talk to the instructor about what it is you want to get out of that workshop. And that's something that I always tell my participants in our meet and greet. I sit down with them, I say, hey, what do you want to get from this? Like, what's your unicorn shot? What do you want to learn? And that helps me as an instructor kind of direct the group in a manner of like, oh, hey, Susan said she wanted sunrise over here. And then, Bill wanted to get a night sky shot over here. So make sure that they're accommodating to what it is you want to get, because you want to learn, you want to grow, and you want to get those images that you strive to get for that location. So 2024 workshops for me, they're getting very, very filled up very quickly. I have 2 spots left for my Oregon Coastline workshop, which is most likely going to be taking place in October of next year. We just actually had to shift it. And then Fall in the Swamp, if you guys have not been to the swamps in East Texas for fall, that is probably one of my favorite workshops. That is just in a really remote area of East Texas. Swamps, alligators, cypress trees, fall colors, unicorns. It's fantastic. So now let's chat about what to do after you shoot your shots. So, this is something I've seen over the years of teaching. And, last night when I was looking for a photo to really describe or convey the mindset of what I see out there, this Beavis and Butthead shot came up, and I was like, that is perfect. So, people go out, we photograph, we create, we end up with, terabytes of, footage or imagery, and what do you do with it? So your options, this is kind of what, once again, I've gathered off of just kind of observing over the years. So, a lot of people will go and shoot and they'll just throw the image up on social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or I think it's called X now. You've got Facebook, you got Flickr, you got 500px. A lot of people go out, they'll spend money on these trips and throw it out there, put it on the internet, and forget that photo ever existed. And it's something I am seeing too quite a bit, is, a lot of people are getting affected by the way like the algorithms change within social media. And that's actually kind of pushing people away from, creating and sharing their work. So let me just kind of put this out there. Don't let your work be defined by the likes that you get on a photo. Like, share your work with the world, be proud of it, but don't get to where, hey, I'm only getting X amount of likes, I'm not going to share my work anymore. Put it out there. I guarantee you somebody is enjoying your work. The other option I see people do is they share with their family. They have a slideshow. Believe it or not, I still do it with my mom. My mom's disabled, so she cannot travel much, and so she used to be really big into traveling. So when I come home from my trips, my brother makes fun of me because I literally hook up my phone to the TV and I start sharing all the images, and everybody calls it my slideshow. And so, you can go out there and shoot some awesome stuff and, share it with your family. You could also do what a lot of people do, and forget the photo even exists. If you're not a photographer, as a profession, you go out, you shoot, life happens, you get busy, and then you forget that you even took the photo in the first place. You could also edit. We've all been there. Edit your image, take some serious time on it. Say, I'm going to come back and finish it tomorrow, and you forget to save, Photoshop crashes, and then you wave the white flag and say, you know what? I'm not going to work on this, or maybe I'll come back to it. And then you go back to the previous bullet, which is you forget that photo even exists. So I kind of mentioned those options to everybody because they're real options. But my favorite option to do with your photo is print, frame, and hang it. I can't do that with every photo I take or every trip I take, but there are definitely special photos that reside with me, whether it is a composition that I was after for years, or whether it was, a really unique moment. I had lightning, I had a volcano, I had the northern lights and the unicorn tail. There's these moments that stand out, or, moments that really hit you emotionally. Those are the images that I really suggest, hey, put your time and effort into properly editing them and then print them. And, some people can have an image in every room. Some people can have multiple images in every room, or sometimes it's fun to even put together like a photo book, a nice photo book from a very specific trip, or maybe a year. So I can't encourage you guys enough. Don't be afraid of printing your work, put it to it, and be proud of what it is you shoot, whether it's a single image, a book, or multiple images. Take some time and actually do something with your work. Over the I've printed my work in many different ways. I've printed it just, back when you had to print a photo, when you had no other option. That was how, you got your images. You had a roll of film and then you printed it. I've printed for clients all over the world. I've printed for trade shows. I've printed for, books. I've done a lot of different print work, and it is work. I'm going to be honest with you. But it also is a very proud moment when you see your image in print. Seeing it on a computer screen is great, but when you see an image, something that's actually tangible and physical, and you can hang it or you can put it somewhere, there's just this like proud moment that is yours. So you got multiple ways to print an image. I wish I could say, hey, raise your hand if you've ever said, I'm going to go print my image at CVS or Walgreens. But you can print at home. You could print at small little places like CVS, Walgreens, Sam's Club, Costco, or you can have an actual print company do it. And to be completely transparent, over the years, I've done everything. I've had a printer. I have had where, I was in a bind and I needed to go print something very quickly at Costco. or I've had local printers, or eventually, the guys at DSI. So, my thing is, over the years, I've learned, as much as I would love, and there's kind of a sense of pride of having your own printer, there's a lot that can go wrong. I saw this little pie chart and I started laughing, because it's like, literally, like, this is everything that you have experienced. So what I'm getting at is, printing, you need to kind of figure out what works best for you in regards to how you're going to print the image. So let's quickly talk about some of the things that you can do to make your printing more successful, whether you're doing it at home or you're sending it off to digital silver imaging. These are things that I have learned over the years, and things that I have seen by judging contests and doing critique sessions for my workshop participants. So first things first, let's talk about kind of the workflow. Shooting correctly in the field. That is huge, because if you're not shooting correctly in the field, you're already creating issues for yourself in the digital darkroom, and then that can be issues that are reflected in your prints. So being meticulous in the digital darkroom. If you guys have ever seen on, say, Facebook, where somebody gets a nice photo and they throw it up on Facebook and they say, hey, here's a quick edit from tonight's beautiful sunset. And it may be a nice image, but by the time that person really puts the TLC into that image, nobody cares anymore, because they've already seen that image. So I always tell my workshop students, like, if you get something great, you are the only person that knows that you have that image. Okay, so nobody's sitting on my Facebook right now hitting refresh going, when is Mike going to post the next photo? Nobody's sitting on my Instagram refreshing it going, when is Mike going to post the next photo? It's easy to get excited about a photo that you capture, but don't rush the process of dusting it off and really making it something that is worthy of, whether it's sharing on social, sharing with your family, or printing it. Put that same TLC that you put into creating the image in the field into your post-processing, because once you share an image, it's out there. And if you go back and you say, oh, well, I could edit this better, and you try and edit it better and then repost it a day later, the surprise of it, the sensation of seeing it for the first time, that's already gone. So being meticulous in the darkroom, we're going to get to that in a second here, a little bit more in detail. Choosing the right printer, that is something that just kind of talked about a second ago. Choose a printer that you are confident in, and we'll talk about some of the things to look for there in a few minutes. Understanding the difference in your print material. There's lots of different choices, lots of different finishes. Which one's for you? And then the proper display. Something that I'm always thinking about when I print an image, or I consider an image for print, is, well, where is this going to go? Is it going to be in an area that's actually lit well? Is it going to be an area that is in an open space, like a kitchen with a big window, and it's not going to have any sort of artificial light on it? So these are already kind of things that I start building into my mind as I'm shooting, in regards to what the final product's going to be and how it's going to be utilized. So shooting correctly in the field, let's talk about this real fast. So histogram versus the LCD preview. Biggest tip I can give you guys is to pay attention to your histogram more than how the image looks off the back of the camera. So you're not necessarily aiming for creating the most perfect image out in the field. You're aiming to create the most perfect image that is going to give you the best options in the digital darkroom when you edit it. So you guys may have heard shooting to the right or shooting to the left. Everybody's got their different preference on how to kind of push the histogram one way or the other. But what I try to aim for is I shoot in camera raw. So I've got all the dynamic range and all the ability to really work that image compared to like a JPEG or a TIFF in the camera. And I pay attention to the histogram. And the big thing with the histogram is you want to make sure that you're not clipping. You're not clipping your blacks. You're not clipping your whites. You're giving yourself as much data within that file to really create something even better when you get into Lightroom or Photoshop. So if you're not familiar with the histogram, do some research on that. There's plenty of wonderful videos out on YouTube that can tell you how to manage your histogram to get the most out of it for your camera. Next tip, frame correctly. I know that seems simple, but I see this all the time where people shoot a little unlevel. Okay, so I want you guys to take a minute to think about this. You have, first off, you have a built-in level on your camera, so use it. You know, a lot of it is, you know, on the Nikons, you just kind of scroll through the info button and you get a level. There's levels in every relatively new camera now. So use a level. And the reason I say that is let's do some basic math here. We'll keep it kind of simple. If you buy a $4,000 camera and that camera has 40 megapixels, and then you shoot an unlevel image, which requires you to crop it 25% once you get done rotating it to level it. Well, now you've paid $4,000 for a 30 megapixel camera. So take the time to level your camera when you're out in the field. That is something that I see all the time. And I'm like, just level it out as best you can. That's going to help you out. Clean your sensor. Okay, if you are unfamiliar with dirty sensors, come out with me for a storm chase. You'll very quickly realize what a dirty sensor is. But you're going to see these little kind of spots all over your frame, and they are usually hiding and then lurking in the corners. Clean your sensor. Whether you send it off to a company to clean your sensor or you get the swabs and you clean it yourself, make sure you're keeping that sensor as clean as possible, because there's nothing worse than printing an image and you're super proud of it. You've really put in all the work to do it correctly. And then you see this black little orb hiding in the sky and you go, well, what in the heck? Oh no. And that is a sensor spot. So keeping your camera, keeping your lenses relatively clean is going to help you have an overall better print at the end. Triple check focus. You know, it's just exactly what it sounds like. Make sure you're sharp. You know, there is a little bit of leniency when you're printing very small for having an image that isn't necessarily sharp. But when you start printing big, those small little errors are going to reveal themselves. Now, yes, you can tell your friends it's one of those like 3D, you know, posters that we had back in the 90s where you cross your eyes and all of a sudden everything becomes sharp. But really, make sure you're doing the work out in the field. You know, you have focus peaking within the cameras. You can use little like the little Hoodman loop things to put up to your viewfinder and your LCD to double check the focus, or you can simply just zoom in to say 100% on your playback and just make sure you're nice and tack sharp. But before you walk away from a scene, make sure that you've got the image as sharp as you can. That way your print is going to be as perfect as possible.
Mike?
Matching color space on the camera. Yes.
So I just have a question that I'm going to ask about focusing.
Shoot.
So what about things like focus peaking, you know, in your in-camera kind of devices? Is that something you use? Do you find that reliable? I personally find it really difficult to use that. But so I just want your opinion on that.
Yeah, so I it's a loaded question, actually. I shoot most of my work actually in manual focus. So I have my focus peaking on, but I kind of have trust issues from it at times. So even though I may be perfectly peaked according to the focus peaking, I still zoom in on the playback and double check it. So it's a great way to kind of get in the area of knowing, hey, I'm tack sharp, but there's nothing that even comes close to just zooming in with your own eyes and making sure. So I use it, but I once again double check it when all is said and done. So it's not like just throw it, it's peaked.
Yeah.
Got.
Do you have a particular, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here because we're getting a couple in the chat. Yeah. Is there a particular product that you like, or is that more dependent on your camera?
Yeah, so it's just the Hoodman loop, I believe it's called. It's just the basic one. It just cuts out all the glare. You can put it right up to your LCD. Now I do shoot with a mirrorless camera. I'm sorry?
It kind of pops up off the back of your camera if it's on your.
Yeah, exactly. You can put like it comes with like this little magnetic rectangle that you can put on. It's got adhesive, so you can put it around your LCD and then just kind of pop that on. It cuts out a lot of the glare, brings you into like 100% magnification. So you can really see what it is you're shooting or looking for the sharpness. Now I do shoot with mirrorless, and you have the EVF as well. But I do like having the loop for like a kind of like a bigger kind of zoom, if that makes sense. And then sometimes, especially when I'm shooting video work, I have a Ninja. I have a monitor on top, so that gives me an even bigger just kind of view of what it is I'm doing and whether I'm sharp or not. So just the basic Hoodman loop is what I have.
And do you focus stack at all?
Yeah, so when the scene calls for it. So, you know, talking about focus stacking real fast, you know, focus stacking, if you're not familiar with the process of it, it is where you set up a composition, you're on a tripod, and you have a foreground that is relatively close and a background that is actually pretty darn far away. And you want to make sure that everything is tack sharp from the closest point to the furthest point. Now, there's a misconception that, oh, if I shoot everything at a high aperture, it's going to be sharp all the way through. And that's not actually true. There's actually a point where at a higher aperture, you start getting a little bit softer. So focus stacking is a great way to make sure that you have those details that are close to your camera and those details that are very far, all sharp. And the way you shoot it on a tripod, you get your settings, and you simply start at either the closest or the furthest point, doesn't matter. And you focus on that point. Say like we're starting close to far. You focus on that point that's closest, you take a photo. You then zoom, or not zoom, sorry, you then focus a little further away, take a photo. And basically your focus is getting further and further away in increments until you reach your background. Then in Photoshop, you can very easily stack that all together and have an image that is tack sharp from the closest to the furthest point. Now, the catch with that is, let's use this image that I have pulled up here of the forest. There's really no close foreground here. So focus stacking for this scene here really wouldn't be that beneficial. But if I had a shot where I had a starfish that was literally 3-4 inches away from my 14 millimeter, and then off in the distance, I had a C stack that was, you know, 200-300 feet away, that's when a focus stack would be very beneficial, because I'd focus in on that point on the starfish that's closest to the camera. And then I'd maybe focus a little bit on the midground of the starfish, and then like the furthest leg of the starfish, the midground of the sand in between the starfish and the C stack, and then out to the C stack. So once again, there's plenty of tutorials on focus stacking online, but focus stacking is something that is extremely beneficial to learn technique-wise, but it only works in certain situations when you have something that's very, very close to the lens and also very far from the lens. So if you have something where you're using like a 70-200, odds are you're not really gonna be focus stacking. If you're shooting a 14-24 and you have something that's relatively close to the frame and a very interesting background, that's when a focus stack would be more beneficial. I think you're muted, but we're good. Sweet. All right. Rock on. Okay. So Bob Ross. I know. It's not your Bob Ross that you know and love, but you know, Photoshop's fun. So Bob Ross, I refer to Bob Ross on all of my workshops. Okay. And if you have not heard of Bob Ross, one, I am very sorry. But two, as soon as this meeting is done, I want you to go to YouTube and I want you to watch a Bob Ross video. So Bob Ross was a painter. He would come on to PBS, I think it was, every Saturday morning, and he would have his big afro and he had a blank canvas, and he would say, hey, you know, good morning. Today we're going to paint this beautiful mountain scene. We're going to have the clouds over here. We're going to have the sun coming in over here. We're going to have this little river. We're going to have a happy tree. We're going to, you know, have flowers down here. And he always had the craziest colors. He'd have like fuchsia blue, indigo green, and then he'd be like, all right, we're going to also use this paintbrush, and we're going to use this knife, and we're going to use this thing. We're going to use this ice cream scoop, you know, and he'd have all these crazy tools as well. And what he would do has stuck with me throughout my entire photography career. Before he ever put a single drop of paint on that canvas, he had a vision for what it was he was going to create. And then he would explain how he was going to create it with the colors and what he was going to use as his tools. The same applies to your photography out in the field. Think about what it is you're going to shoot. Think about how you're going to create it, and think about what you're going to do with it. If this is an image that you know, hey, I really want to hang on the wall, I really want to try and sell this at an art show, put the time and effort in to make that image as perfect as possible for you to post-process and to work with. So the digital darkroom, AKA Photoshop, Lightroom, Microsoft Paint. Kidding about the Microsoft Paint work. Please don't take your work into Microsoft Paint. Lightroom, Adobe Photoshop, those are great softwares to get to know. But you can definitely help yourself out before you even go into the digital darkroom to get your images as close to perfect or as primed and ready to go to be printed. So the first thing I can always recommend is calibrate your monitor. Okay, there are various different calibration systems out there. Spider, Calibrate, the list goes on and on. Spider and Calibrate are the two that I work with. But to calibrate your monitor is going to allow you to get closer to the best colors and also learn what kind of brightness you should be working on your computer. You know, you don't want to be sitting in a super dark room with the computer monitor all the way up in brightness. You want to find that brightness that is good for that environment that you're in to work on. And a monitor or a calibration system will help you figure out exactly what you should be at. And with that kind of tied into calibrating, you need to find your workspace. You know, I don't recommend working and editing in a whole variety of environments. So don't go be working downstairs outside in, bright sunlight and then come into a really dark room. I try to find an area that I am going to call my editing space. And I try to figure out how that area is going to be lit. Am I going to be working with the blinds open? Am I going to be working with the blinds closed? Am I going to have the light on? Am I going to have the light off? And once again, that will all kind of tie into your calibration system on what your settings should be for your monitor. And the cool thing about it is once you calibrate, every monitor is different. So once you calibrate your monitor and you're done with the whole software system there, you can actually at the end toggle back and forth and see what your monitor looked like and what the colors looked like before and what they look like after. And you'll be quite scared, but also quite surprised at how much has changed. So calibrating your monitor is one of the biggest, most important things in my mind for getting a proper print. Take your time as well. We're getting a thumbs up from the DSI guys over there too. Take your time, when you edit. We talked about that. Don't rush. That's how you make mistakes. And there's nothing worse than getting a nice print back, spending a good amount of money on a print and realizing, hey, you accidentally smudged this part with the clone stamp tool, or when you dodged a burn over here, you accidentally, did it outside of what you're trying to dodge a burn. You have this halo. So take your time. Something I always recommend to everybody, whether you're going to post it on the web or you're going to do a print, it's very, very easy to get tunnel vision when you're editing. So take the image when you are done with it and show it to somebody else. I have a couple of photographer friends that I show my work to before I ever put it online or ever printed it. And I say, hey, let me get your feedback, because when you get into the zone of editing, you do get that tunnel vision and you often overlook certain little things that other people may catch right off the bat. So it's good to have a separate set of eyes on your work and giving you some feedback of, hey, Mike, I think you oversaturated this part, or hey, what about doing a little bit of dodging here? Or hey, you know what? I can see a little bit of haloing that happened over here because you used too much mid-tone contrast. So getting some different feedback from a new set of eyes is also a good way to ensure that your final product is going to be as perfect as possible. So three things that I see quite often in print contests that are, to me, kind of big mistakes. First off, don't over sharpen. Everybody goes crazy sometimes with the clarity slider or the texture slider or dehaze, which are not even sharpening mechanisms, they're mid-tone contrast, but that creates haloing and that creates this kind of white border around a lot of areas where it's high contrast and it just doesn't look natural. It wasn't there. It also makes things very grungy. But when you actually go into sharpening, whether you're using the sharpening slider in Lightroom or you're going in with like a high pass filter, be gentle, okay? Don't over sharpen, because once again, it could create these kind of artifacts. It could create these kind of spots. It can create noise. It can create haloing. So, use sharpening with intent and use it gently. And one of my favorite ways to sharpen is to sharpen in a localized manner using masking. So, for example, if you have a shot here, like I have up on the right side, that sky, that rainbow, that should all actually be nice and soft. It shouldn't be sharp. But that yucca, the detail of the yucca, that is going to be nice and sharp. So here I'd apply, maybe say, let's call it a 1 pixel high pass filter on a vivid color blend mode. And then I'd go and I would paint it in with a mask on the areas that I want sharpened. And the other areas I would leave unsharpened, like the sky. And that's a great way to do it, in my opinion, because then you can go ahead and take the opacity of that sharpen layer down or bring it up and really refine how much or how little is getting sharpened. So sharpening is a good thing, but it's also something that is used and abused quite often. So make sure when you sharpen, you're doing it in a way that has intent and in a way that isn't necessarily destructive to the image. Don't use autocorrect. And if anybody catches my autocorrect mistake, 10 points to you, because I'm full of dad jokes. But don't use autocorrect. And what I mean by that is when you send in your images to get printed, some companies have where it says autocorrect color. Check this box. If you're editing correctly and you're doing everything in a correct manner to where your colors are good, your monitor is correct, color corrected, you don't want them to correct it. Sometimes I've had people where they send in a photo and we've worked on it quite a bit on the workshop. We've got it great. They send it in, they click autocorrect, and all of a sudden now there's a magenta or a green color cast to it. So my personal preference is don't use the auto color correct. Be careful on saturation and luminance. We all love, well, most of us love, very colorful images, but there is a point of no return there. So make sure that you're not oversaturating or using the luminance too much to where all of a sudden you may see your colors get very blocky, or you may see banding. So for example, if I were to take the blue luminance slider on this image that I have pulled up on the right now to add a lot of black to it, you would see a very distinct kind of band coming in from left to right across that blue. And that does print. So you're going to get some very blocky looks to your colors if you're very, very aggressive on the luminance. So there's an image I remember seeing in a contest that I judged last year where they had this beautiful, beautiful sky. And I could just tell that they crunched the luminance values left and right. And it looked almost like like a Super Mario's like 8-bit, kind of color across the sky. So yeah, be gentle. It's okay to use those sliders. They're there, use them, but don't be too aggressive with them. All right, choose your printer. Printing company versus at-home printing or at-home printing, I should say. Yeah, it's nice to have a printer at home. It's really nice to have it to where you can say, hey, I'm going to go print, call it a day. I'm going to make something right here and I'm going to have it. I have an art show coming up, whatnot. I can print it off in a few minutes, but it's not that perfect of a world. Okay, so if you are choosing to print at home, first off, you have that initial investment of purchasing a printer. Okay, then you have to have, where do I put the printer? Do I put it in my office? Do I have space for my office? Simple little things I've run to the past, like is whoever I'm with going to be okay with me printing all night long and hearing the noise of it? Also, you really have to become a master of that printer, and you have to have the time to invest into properly knowing how to work that printer. You have to purchase your own ink, and the list goes on and on. I'm not trying to push anybody away from that, but these are things that I've learned over the years that, hey, it is a lot of work to have your own printer at home. Plus, it gets expensive. You can burn through paper if you don't know what you're doing. So my choice is going with a printing company. And when you start doing your research on a printing company, make sure, and we're going to jump to the fourth bullet real fast, make sure that that company has experience, and make sure that when you talk to them, they really sound like they know what they're doing. They sound like they understand the papers, the prints, the finishes. They actually care about what it is that you want and what you get. So do your research, and we can kind of go back to bullet point number 2 real fast with that. One of my favorite ways to, in the past to find like a printing company that I'm happy with is hard proofing. So you can soft proof your images through Lightroom, and try to get them as close as possible to, what the printer profiles are going to be. But that doesn't mean it's going to match the actual paper as well. But hard proof. So what I like to do when I find a company that I want to work with, I say, hey, here's an image of mine, or maybe here's 3 images of mine. Can you print them off 8x12 and through your most popular papers or your metals? And then when I get them in, I can actually see how the quality is. I can see if it's printing close to what I'm actually seeing on my monitor, and then make my decisions that way. So hard proofing is my method of really making sure that the printing company is one I want to work with and they know their stuff and their quality is good, but also am I getting what I'm seeing off of my monitor as well. So printing, it takes a little bit of time to, find that. It's kind of like dating. You need to find that right relationship. Somebody who really cares about your work, somebody that you care about them as well, which I think should be a thing. But really taking the time to make sure that what you're getting from the printer is what you want to be displayed or sold. Knowing your material. This is also another biggie. So you have a variety of materials you can print on, paper, canvas, metal, glass, wood, you have a lot of different options. And if you go to my printing store right now on my website, you're going to notice it takes you directly to an email. And that's because I'm in the process of completely revamping my printing store to be complete paper only. And I've done canvas, I've done metal over the years, and I've had a lot of problems at times with metal in regards to, 1, it getting damaged when it's getting shipped, but 2, finding just overall the perfect place to display metal where it looks good and you're not, spending a good amount of money on properly lighting it. Canvas I've done as well, but I feel like a lot of it, the colors kind of get muted in canvas as well. It gets dusty, it's hard to keep kind of clean. Paper, it just has a very traditional look. It's got that fine art look. You can put a nice mat with it and a nice frame. You can get nice glass, and I feel like that is, in my opinion, how photography should be presented. So that is kind of where I'm leaning now, is going more into the paper aspect of everything, of my printing. Knowing the finishes, high gloss, matte, luster. There are so many different finishes that you can get once you start diving into the world, especially if you get a sample pack from, say, Hahnemühle or somebody like that. You're starting to flip through and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of different papers. But understanding what kind of finish is going to look best on your work. And every image is going to be different too. At the end here, I've got some sample images from DSI here on different kinds of paper, and we'll kind of talk about the different finishes and why an image may look good in more of a matte, and some may look better in more of like a metallic kind of paper. So knowing the difference there is important for you choosing what your final outcome is going to be. And also, don't be print at different aspect ratios. Most cameras are shooting either 4x5 or 2x3. Don't be afraid to crop your images and print at a 16:9 or a 1:1 or a 1:3 if the image fits that aspect ratio. To be completely honest, I actually sell quite a bit of 16:9 or 1:3 prints because they tend to fit better, say, over a couch or in a narrow hallway. So don't be afraid to print in different aspect ratios. The printers are capable of doing that. Sample packets we mentioned just a second ago are a great way, once again, to kind of get a feel for different papers, different materials. You can touch base with the printing company and ask them to send you a sample packet. And that's a good way to really kind of get something tangible in your hands again and see how the paper may reflect or work with light, or how it works with different ink. And then display, last but not least. This is one of the best ways to help you make a decision on the image. or how it's going to be printed. So once again, going back to Bob Ross, everything's thought through and pre-visioned. So if I am working on an image that I'm going to print this, I need to think about where that's going. Is it going to go, once again, in a place that's a very open area and all the light that's coming in is natural light? Or am I going to have the ability to actually put up a rail system and light it kind of like in a gallery lighting? And that's going to help me decide, once again, maybe what kind of finish. Am I going to go with something that's a little bit more reflective or something that's a little bit more subdued? I believe that's the last slide right there on that.
Great.
Do we have any questions there before we kind of show some of the prints here?
I just wanted to say that we did have a question in the chat about aspect ratio, and I can't find it. So if you posted that question, please put it in the Q&A and we'll get back to it.
Cool. Yeah, any other questions pop up?
Nope. Not that I haven't been able to answer.
Okay, awesome. All right. So what I'm going to do is stop this real fast here, and we're going to Vanna White it real fast here. Let me grab some of these papers here. Okay. So we're going to do our best here to kind of show these off here. All right. How is that kind of shining for you guys here?
Looks good.
Is that looking good? I'm just not seeing anything like your face is reflecting or anything here. So this is an image here real quick. Like I said, I'm going to kind of lean out of the way here. That shot storm season. So very high contrast kind of scene, lots of highlights, lots of shadows. So when I'm shooting something like this, we can hold up the other one. I really do feel like Vanna White right now. So this is a little bit more of kind of a flat kind of matte, almost it looks like, versus a little bit higher gloss. And if you guys can see that sheen that's coming off of it. So for something that is more high contrast, I will technically go with something that has more of a glossy pop, because that pop, like a metallic paper, has a really nice kind of almost three-dimensionality to it that I feel like brings that image to life. So I believe that this one's the Hahnemann metallic that we've got right here. And if I'm mistaken, let me know. But that's got, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but that kind of metallic shine to it there. And the same goes for, we've got another shot right here that is from the Volcano that's got this very kind of high gloss, almost three-dimensional look to it because of that metallic finish. Now, if your image has a very kind of poppy dynamic range to it, so whether that's color contrast or whether that is lights and darks, I definitely recommend going with more of that kind of metallic finish or that kind of glossy finish. Now, if you're going something a little bit more subdued, so for example, something more wildlife, I've got a couple here where we are with the humpbacks, and you can see there's not really a big glare on it or reflection on it. And I like that here because this image isn't necessarily full of contrast. It's almost one kind of tonality in like a light blue tone. And so I feel like this is a more subtle scene. So you go with something that's a little bit more subdued, more matte, more smooth. And that just kind of creates a more tranquil scene. And I feel like that works better with those colors, with that overall pop in the scene. Once again, if this whale is jumping out and there's a bright, vibrant rainbow above it, and you can see like blue skies and clouds and all that, then all of a sudden there's a lot more contrast, and that might work better with kind of a higher gloss or more of a shine to it. But the other thing I want to show you guys, and I know Eric, you had texted me and you're like, "Hey, can we do this?" And I actually love it. So going black and white on a scene that's a little more tranquil, but yet you want to bring in a little bit more contrast, that black and white works out really, really nice. And this has got, I believe this is your guys' fiber paper. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, basically a couple of things since you're on papers, Mike, if I could chime in. So that black and white is kind of a unique process that's not really available in many places, but we converted that for you to black and white. And then we have a special silver gelatin print process where we can actually expose a traditional black and white silver gelatin Ilford paper with light. And then that that paper is actually run through black and white chemicals. So we're kind of blending the world of this great digital darkroom that Mike has been talking about onto a real classic silver gelatin print, which is a beautiful option. And the other thing I just wanted to chime in on is about the metallic paper. I know if none of you have seen this Hahnemühle metallic paper is the world's first fine art metallic paper. So other than like maybe the Kodak or the Fuji that you are familiar with, this has a really beautiful tonal scale. It's archival, and it doesn't have the high shine that some of those photographic papers have. So anyway, I wanted to just mention that about the Hahnemühle metallic and our silver gelatin print process.
And that's a lot of science right there. But that is, something that's really cool about this is I didn't get to see these prints until yesterday because we were driving back from Utah. So I finally got to go pick them up. And when I pulled them out, it was really, really cool to see exactly what you're talking about. And I know it doesn't come through the greatest on Zoom as it would in person, but that black and white, it doesn't convey that traditional black and white. It has the traditional black and white kind of values to it, but it also has, with that kind of gloss to it, also gives it this really kind of almost, once again, three-dimensionality to it. It's really, really nice. And it's funny because I got them at my parents' house because that's where we had them sent to. And my dad, when this one came out, my dad goes, "That's my Christmas gift." He didn't care at all about the color or anything. He's like, "I love the black and white." And when we chatted about this, you're like, "Hey, can I try this one in black and white?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Because, I love the blue because I was like, "Oh, it's underwater." I got to say the black and white works really, really nice here on this paper. Now, one of the other things I wanted to touch base on, we good on time right now, you guys?
Yeah, I think we're running a little long, but we're okay.
Okay, cool. So one last thing is, so we got this image here from Quiet, and it's got the nice kind of light coming across the scene. It's got some nice contrast to it. It's got some color pop. This is one that as soon as I saw this come out, this is a powerful example of that kind of metallic finish to it. This one, just because the landscapes start to get that three-dimensionality to it, but that kind of metallic look to the paper really pulls you in. And this is, like, not all jokes aside, this is one of the ones that makes you feel like those old 1990s posters where you cross your eyes and all of a sudden it starts coming out at you.
Those hallusions,
so really
Mike,
cool.
is what those are called. Hallusions.
Exactly. There you go. The illusions. Yeah, you'd see like the panda bear come out,
Yeah.
But the way that a paper works with the scene, when you properly tie those two together, you're creating magic. And that's something that, I know with you guys, I've come to you guys over the years and said, "Hey, I don't have time to make a decision. It's for a client. Just choose something." And you guys have always crushed it. Finding the right paper to work with the right scene, with the right light, with the right lighting. Those are all things to think about when you guys are creating your images and getting them ready to print. And once again, the guys at DSI, you guys always do an absolutely wonderful job with it. So
thank you.
But yeah, I know we're running a little over. I could chat all day about this stuff, but any last questions to chat about?
Yeah, we do have some questions. So let's see. So I have a question here, and from Bruce, I'm just going to go through my list here. Do you think there are any special considerations in printing IR, particularly with color, black and white? Would just be black and white? ? No. So IR
in regards to infrared, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Infrared. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a workshop participant. He is very good at printing infrared, or actually shooting infrared. And everything that he's printed, he's always printed it on a black and white kind of paper. So without going too deep into that, I mean, I would say that would be my choice, is to go. I would actually try the fiber and see what that looks like on there, because I think that could look really, really cool there. I'm not sure if I answered that correctly there, or if that's
I would throw my 2 cents in too. I think if it's a black and white image, our DSI digital silver print, and fiber is the best way to go, my bias. But I also think if it's a color infrared image, I also would think the metallic paper, that Hahnemühle metallic rag, would be good. So I'm going to jump back. I'm going to use that as a jumping off point. There was another question in the chat, and I can't remember who it was, but I remember the question, which was, what is a good paper to use for a print for sale? So I know that there are lots of papers out there, but I would look for a paper that's archival, acid-free, with no OBAs, which are optical brightening agents. So I think that would be the choice for a print for sale to a customer or to a gallery or to have in a fine art exhibition.
Now, I have a question for you guys, actually, because this came up on our workshop last week. What is the best way or best kind of pen to use to sign our prints if they're going to sign?
Actually, that's a great question, and we haven't listed them yet, but we do sell. Hahnemühle makes a great pen and pencil set, and it's, if you don't find that through us or whatever, you can go to an art supply store. What you want is an archival pigment pen, a micron pen, and I don't know if Andrea, you can post a link to those. I mean, we don't have them, but we'll. I've been thinking we should make these available to people because they're excellent. Their pencils are great for signing the back of our silver gelatin prints or matte papers. And the micron pigment archival pen is great for signing the front of anything with like any of those semi-gloss fine art papers you mentioned.
Yeah, I'll post a link. Also, apropos to printing, we have something called the print sample promotion that allows you to print one image on either 3 pigment papers, color or black and white, or you can print one image on our 2 black and white real silver gelatin papers. So that's called the print sample promotion. And I posted a link earlier in the chat for that, but you can either call us or I'll post it again here. And I just posted the link for those Hahnemühle pens, which are called the Signing Pen Duo. Catchy name. So I just posted that.
Yeah.
But we have more questions, so I want to just kind of keep this rolling.
Yeah.
Can I answer Roger's question, Andrea?
Yeah, go for it.
So Roger, you asked about framing prints, and one of the things that we're now offering as a way of not having to put glazing over your prints is we have installed a special spray booth, and Hahnemühle makes a really good non-aerosol UV spray that we use with a special spray gun. So we can actually coat any fine art print that has a cotton base to it with this UV protective spray that really doesn't alter the look of your image, but does provide that a little bit of abrasion resistance, but more importantly, some UV protection. And then you can frame it in a frame that doesn't have glass. We also offer a couple of print hanging solutions that are aluminum print hangers or wood print hangers with magnets. And we'll send all this stuff out. We're going to do a nice follow-up email to everybody. So we'll send you a bunch of information on these various things that we're mentioning here. And the print sample promotion that somebody just asked is something we have ongoing. So it doesn't it doesn't go away. We instituted this about 10 years ago.
Yeah. So here's another question. So I like that idea of putting all this stuff, Eric, in the follow-up email. That way people don't have to make sure that they click on it and bookmark it. Do you find that glossy paper makes an image more reflective under glass? I find glossy papers more reflective under glass personally can be problematic.
I think a lot of that has to do with where you hang it.
Correct.
Just from my experience, if you hang it right under, a spotlight and you take a few feet back, then all of a sudden everything's gonna, reflect. If you hang it properly, and actually light it properly, I haven't had any issues with that.
Okay. That we had a lot of questions about aspect ratio, and I think Eric posted a link in the chat about aspect ratio. We could stick on that. It gets a little technical, but there's that link, and I suggest you also look it up online. And here's a good one. Oh, this is a paper for Susan. That was your question, I think, about asking what paper to use for a print sale. And then John asked, can I get a paper sample from DSI? And that would be our print sample promotion, because what we really feel is, you could, let's say we do a lot with Hahnemühle. So you could contact Hahnemühle and ask them for a paper sample booklet, and they would send it to you, but you're only really seeing just the paper. You're not seeing what the image looks like on the paper. And that's what's really important, because some papers have a warmer base and some papers have a cooler base, and some papers have a texture. And like that metallic paper actually has a metallic flake embedded in the paper. So, until you see an image or your imagery printed on the paper, you're not really getting a very clear idea of what the paper's like. Yes, you can tell if it's warmer or cooler, or if it's smoother or rougher, but that's about it. So we think that our print sample promotion is really the best way to do that. Or if you're a home printer, get a sample pack and try that. And also, for those of you that are printing at home, I would just recommend two things. One is, you're going to get a printer, get a pigment ink printer, either from Canon, who is our preferred printer. We think the Canons are a superior product. That's our opinion. We could get into that, or Epson, which is also a very good printer, but make sure you get one of their pro pigment ink printers if you want something that's archival and is good for exhibition quality.
And real quick on the hard proofing, I think the hard proofing is so important, especially if you're getting, if you're gonna print something 40 by 60, you're gonna spend a good amount of money on that whole process, right? So spend the money to get exactly what you're saying. The sample packs from you guys, or the sample prints, where you can choose, 3 of the different papers and try it on there, so you can see what your image is gonna look like on that. Because exactly what you said, some of the papers have warmer tones, cooler tones. You're not gonna know exactly how your image is gonna look. So if you're gonna go big, or you have a client that wants really big, spend the money to get the sample, make sure that's exactly what you want before you go big and then realize, oh, I should have gone with a different kind of paper.
Yeah. So Richard just asked in the chat, without knowing the final media to use for printing, could we send you an image to print and ask for your recommendation as to what media would work best? Most definitely. And the chances are that you're going to be talking to our CSR, Jen, who's got an MFA in photography. She knows these papers like the back of your hand, like the back of her hand, not your hand, her hand. And so that would be weird. But yes, we can definitely give you some suggestions. And then you could actually take those suggestions and go into our print sample promotion and try a couple of specific papers with that image. It would work out great.
A couple of other things that people are asking in about resolution and aspect ratios and exporting and files and all that. I want to tell you that if you go to the digital silver imaging page and you click on order custom prints, up in the top there, we share links about resolution. We share a really great piece that Andrea put together on proper exporting out of Lightroom, so that you get the best file resolution for doing that. And I think that's always a really tricky thing, because you want to be able to make sure that you get the file sent to us at the best the best possible resolution. So those are always good things to handle.
Yeah, I think we're running at about an hour and 15 minutes here. So I think we're going to answer just 1 or 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up. And Joan asks, how do you decide on your print sizes? Maybe Mike, you can field this one.
Yeah. 3 tips for that: 1, budget; 2, where it's gonna go; and then 3, resolution, right? If you shot the image back in the day on like the old Nikon D80, which I think was like, oh God, like 12, maybe not even 12 megapixels, and you want to throw that thing up huge, maybe not the best option there. But yeah, if you have the time, the space, the budget, the resolution to go big, go big. I could tell you, I think there's just nothing cooler than seeing your work big. So Nikon, whenever they have their trade shows, they have the images blown up big, and I always walk by it and I'm like, that's my photo. That's kind of cool, proud dad moment. And so, you know, but really it just comes down to, you know, where you're going to put it, and what the budget's at, and then what the quality overall is. So.
Yeah. And Mike, remember we were talking about this just yesterday about how, you know, if you're printing something that's very large, you shouldn't be looking at it from a foot away, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and that comes down to, you know, a lot of people over sharpen because they're, you know, they've got a print and they're like, oh, okay, you know, and it's like, you shouldn't be looking at your print like that, you know, take a few feet back, and that's where you really want to make sure the image is sharp. I have a question for you guys. Again, this is also something that came up when I was talking about this with my workshop. When you guys, or not necessarily you guys in general, but like when you have a print and it's rolled or delivered rolled, what's the best way to let that print settle? Is it just leaving it out? Is it putting some weights on the corners?
I mean, it depends, I think. There? Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. Thanks. Because, you know, just, you know, from our standpoint, anything up to 20 by 30, we ship flat just for that reason. You know, beyond that size, then we get into rolling prints. So when you get them out, a lot of things that are going to affect how flat those things lie are going to be humidity. Where are you living? And unfortunately, you know, when you get into the more fine art papers like you've been showing, humidity is going to impact how flat that thing lays when you get it. So our recommendation is big table where it can lay out flat a little bit if you're going to, depending on how you're going to do it. You know, if you know, we'd obviously love you to work with us if you're framing, but if you have a favorite local framer that you want to work with, you might want to have us ship it right to your framer. And the reason being is that, you know, you're not unrolling it and then rolling it back up, you know, have us ship it right to your framer. You can go to your framer and roll it out on their big protective tables with weights and look at it there. We're more than happy to do that. We do that for a lot of clients. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question for you, Mike. But yeah, great question.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, so I think we can wrap it up now. I just want to close by saying we just got a question that the recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. And a big, huge thank you to Mike for joining us today. I think this was great.
Thank you guys.
And always great seeing your images.
Great job.
I want to say there'll be a follow-up email. Follow Mike on Instagram and on social media, and go to his website. I posted that in the chat, and it'll be in the email as well. So thank you all for attending.
Yep. Have a great afternoon, everyone. And thanks again. Mike, thank you. Great job.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Good seeing you as always. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.